one of the individuals told me he was making at that time $30,000 a month. Frono's Photos had a bobblehead of himself. He had his own T-shirts. I'm like, holy crap! I'm gonna make a bobblehead of me.
What were you making a month with just your paint business?
With my painting company?
Yeah. Because obviously that seemed like big money. You're like, holy moly, which it is, but.
That before the YouTube even became.
Yeah, that was big money to me. I mean, I don't know. I could have been, at that point in time making $60,000 a year on my painting company, something like that. Nothing. I mean,
so you're not doing bad, but
not
it's
bad.
Like that's incredible money.
Oh, insane money. For making videos, it's like what the heck? It's like if I can just make videos, man, and and make $1 million, that's insane. And so, like Jared taught me, is like, I learned in that seminar that I knew I was going to make YouTube a full-time job, and I knew I was going to figure out somehow. And I knew that YouTube couldn't be your only revenue source at that point in time. And I learned that from Jared Polin. He had T-shirts and a bobblehead, so he had swag. So I went home and I made my first T-shirt that had, an image of me on it and a cartoon character. And I'm like, everybody's gonna be wearing these shirts. And what I found out really quick is no painter dude is gonna wear another dude on his chest. Yeah. And so I didn't sell one. And so I didn't sell a shirt, I didn't sell a hat. I'm like going, why aren't people buying my shirts? Like buying his shirts, it's got his afro on it and stuff. And it's like, maybe I should grow an afro, but I was bald and stuff. And it's like, and so I was just like, I'm going to figure it out. And so like, I just tweaked and did things, and it was probably 4 years after that YouTube really became a full-time job and a full-time living. But I worked hard. I was working, my YouTube channel, eventually became a corporation in itself. So the Idaho Painters, a corporation, which is me. And then I eventually created the brand Paint Life, which is another corporation, which is my online store and the brand I created. So I was running that corporation. I was running the corporation of Idaho B&K Painting. And B&K Painting was, super successful and one of the most, highly, referred painting companies in Idaho. And I just knew I couldn't do them both. And I was going to have to make a decision and go, which one am I going to stick with? And a little trivia, I also, because I figured early on that YouTube might be a good revenue source. I started the Idaho Painter, I started the Idaho Bass Fisherman, and I started the Idaho Cyclist. And the Idaho Cyclist was doing really well too at the time. And I would travel, race. I just rolled up to a line in California, and some dudes were like, "Oh my God, you're the Idaho Cyclist on." But eventually, I knew I couldn't manage multiple channels at once, and I just quit doing the Idaho Cyclist, focused on the Idaho Painter, and it just organically grew.
And how consistent were you with content creation, and how frequent were you putting out videos in that 4-year span, and how much did you need to put out for it to actually be lucrative?
I think like early on, I knew. Here's what the trap you don't want to get into is thinking that YouTube will just be your full-time living and this full-time job that you're going to be doing the next 10, 20 years, because what if YouTube disappears? There's MySpace. It's like, things come and go. And I learned from Jared Polin that, you have to have multiple revenue sources and not rely on one. And to be successful. And so, I was driving down the road one day, to my cabin in McCall with my wife, and my corporation at that time, and everything was known as, my channel was the Idaho Painter. And I knew like someday I'm going to sell this. And someday Sherwin-Williams is going to buy this, but Sherwin-Williams is going to buy the Idaho Painter because it's me. And it has to be more than just me. And I've got to create a brand that, people can back worldwide and get behind. And we're just driving along, and it just dawned on me, on that road, man, was Paint Life. And I was like, Paint Life is what everything I've been trying to build, this community sharing, changing the whole perception of painters and hiding information. And we all want each other to succeed. We become part of Paint Life and part of this community to share with one another, so we all can be successful. And people they can buy into that. They're not going to buy into putting my face on their shirt, but it's easy to buy into a brand that's wearable. Paint Life is wearable. So that brand was born that day. And now the brand, eventually, became Paint Life Supply Co., which sells. That's this online store. So there's an online store and there's a retail store that sells that brand. And so it's multiple, revenue sources. I knew that, that's another revenue source, but then, there's other means, if you work hard enough at this, you're going to eventually, create yourself as a brand. The Idaho Painter became a brand. I eventually created, if you're going to get into this to make a living, I went to a YouTube event. They talked about media decks. I'd never heard of a media deck in my life. And we had to build a media deck, and I built a media deck, and a media deck is the opportunity to present a document to prospective customers or clients to what you can offer them to sell yourself. And in that media deck, you can hire me to be a brand ambassador. You can hire me to review content of yours that's going to go on my platform. You can hire me to do guest appearances. And so all those are revenue sources. And so you got to really diversify yourself.
Did you have advisors that enlightened you on this, or did you just discover this on your own? Did your wife play a role in that?
I would say YouTube, they quit doing the events, and I think they just restarted them. YouTube was very good about wanting to make their fellow channels, YouTubers, successful. And they used to hold events all over the world, and they would invite channels. If you had a certain amount of subscribers, certain amount of likes, whatever on there, they would invite you to these events. And every time I was invited, I would go.
So you always took advantage.
Always took advantage. And you always learn a lot of information, and you don't know what you don't know. One of the last YouTube event I went to, this wasn't put on by YouTube, but it was put on by Clamor, and it was a YouTube event put on by them. I had no idea that YouTube Shorts existed and that Facebook Reels existed. And that was probably only a year and a half ago. And I had no idea that you can make money on Facebook doing Reels. And I met a girl, I was sitting in the gym, I was working out, she was sitting there. My wife asked her, "What are you doing?" She was a teacher, and she quit teaching because she was making $8,000 a month on doing just Reels. And I'm like, what the heck are Reels? And unfortunately, my downfall is you have to follow the trends, and you have to follow what these platforms are doing new, because whatever they're creating new, they're going to promote, and they're going to heavily promote. So, and they all compete with each other. So Facebook doesn't want people watching TikTok. They want you watching their Reels. So they started paying bonuses, and so I found out from her that Reels existed. I made a Reel that day, instantly. And the first month I made $1,200 doing Reels. And 2 months ago, my last check, was $16,000 doing Reels. And I knew some individuals making $30,000 a month on Instagram and Facebook, and one person making $40,000 a month. And and the reason why I say you have to have diversity in what you do is like that teacher. I'll never forget it. She quit her job, and all she was doing was reels on Facebook, and
So now all of our income's tied up in that one thing.
all
now.
of our income is tied up in that one thing. So they just recently came out last month. Facebook eliminated all bonus money, and so the bonus money, is gone. So you instantly, if you're relying on Facebook, to make a living, it's gone. I now Facebook. I still produce reels because they run ads on Reels. And then I also do whatever I put on YouTube, I put on Facebook, which I call horizontal content. Reels is vertical content. They run ads on horizontal content. So I make money on both of those, which is a decent amount of money. I mean, that's, some people can live on, that money.
Do you have a calendar for your content? Do you have a schedule, or do you just act when the inspiration hits?
I would have to say, so my wife is my business manager. My youngest daughter is my social media manager and my procurement specialist. My middle daughter is my customer service manager. My youngest daughter really just is irritated with me that I just do everything on a whim. Yeah. And that's all I just
clearly worked.
It's what's worked, but I think like employees want structure and schedules, and we're trying to get to a point where for 3 months, we have a schedule of what we do and the content we produce. We're getting closer to that. I mean, I have two, videographers that work for me, a photographer that works for me, and
are they like full time, or is it like as needed?
They have their desk, and I wish they were full time. They do subcontract work too. They could be full time. My photographer's full time. Two videographers could be full time. I want them to be full time, but they do other side jobs and stuff like that. So they're in at their desk quite a bit, like almost every day. But